Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Ashafil Anbiya wal Mursaleen Sayyidina Muhammadi wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In last week's lesson, we were looking at the beginning part of Saaiduna Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu's life. And I mentioned that Saaiduna Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was born within the sanctuary of the Kaaba, and that his initial early years were spent under the supervision, under the care and the tarbiyah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that at the age of 10, Saaiduna Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu converted and accepted Islam. I also then went on to mention Saaiduna Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu's sacrifice, in particular his willingness to sacrifice his life for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the hijrah, during the migration from Mecca to Medina Munawwara, and later on his willingness to sacrifice his life for the sake of Islam during the battle of Badr. Now Sayyiduna Ali, he remained in the khidmah and in the service of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina Munawwara in various ways and in various administrative capacities. He helped Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was also one of those Sahabas and companions who bathed Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left this mortal world. And it's also mentioned that along with Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Fadl bin Abbas, Qutam bin Abbas, and Shukran, the freed slave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, went into the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they placed the blessed body of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his grave. Now after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, as I mentioned in last week's lesson, that the first Khalifa chosen by the believers, chosen by the Muslims, was Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And during Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu's khilafat, Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu assisted Abu Bakr, helped Abu Bakr in the running, in the day-to-day running of the Islamic State. And in particular, Sayyiduna Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu would give advice and mashwara to Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and even Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu would take advice and mashwara from Sayyiduna Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And this fabrication made by some, that Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wasn't happy with Abu Bakr, would have been, or through the situation or through the story which we look at, we can see that it's a total fabrication, because if Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was unhappy, he wouldn't have helped Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in the running of the Islamic State, in the running the day-to-day affairs of the Islamic State. And as I was saying, that Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu would actually take advice from Hazrat Ali, in particular when Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu made the intention to wage war against the people of Dhul Qissa. Now Dhul Qissa are those people who during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu refused to give zakat to him. They refused to pay zakat. So Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he asked Ali that, what's your opinion? What do you think I should do? So Hazrat Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he supported and he backed what Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was willing and was intending to do. And if you remember this story, that this was the story when Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, on the other hand, he was saying that let's kind of interpret the actions of these people, let's not do their takfir, let's not wage war against them. But Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Hazrat Ali, they were adamant that no, we should wage war against them. Why? Because they are refusing to give zakat, which is one of the fundamentals and one of the principles of Islam. And that's why later on in Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu's life, Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu would say that I would sacrifice everything for one night of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu and one day of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And the night who Umar radiallahu anhu was referring to is the night Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu spent with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave of Thawr. And the day Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was referring to is the day Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu intended to wage war against these people. So as I was saying that Hazrat Ali assisted Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu in the day-to-day running of the Islamic State, and that Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu would take mashwara and advice from Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now before Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu passed away, during his maradul wafat, during his illness, he asked Hazrat Ali for his opinion that who should be the next Khalifa after my death. Who should be the next Imam? Who should be the next Amir after my death? So Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu at once replied that the next Khalifa after you should naturally be Umar. And this can quite clearly be established from a hadith which can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari, that Muhammad bin Hanafiya was one of the sons of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He once asked his father that who is Khairun Nas, who is the best of all the people after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu replied by saying Abu Bakr, Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Then his son Muhammad bin Hanafiya asked that thereafter who's the next best? So Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu replied that it is Umar. And then his son Muhammad bin Hanafiya, fearing that his father may say Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he then said to his father that, oh, after Umar it must be you who's the next most virtuous in terms of piety and taqwa. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu replied by saying, I'm just like an ordinary Muslim, I'm just like an ordinary person, out of tawadu, out of humbleness. He replied by that. But what we can gather from this particular hadith, that Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu knew that after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the natural successor and the natural next Khalifa and Imam should be Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now when Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu became the second Khalif and the second Imam, like in the Khilafat of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Ali assisted Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu in the day-to-day running of the Islamic State. And Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu acknowledged and realized the gem of Hazrat Ali when it came to jurisprudence, when it came to legal issues. And whenever there was a legal problem, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu would always go to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu for his insight, for his wisdom in that particular issue or in that particular mas'ala. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. Once there was a woman who was brought to Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and she had committed zina. She had committed adultery. She was married, but she was also insane as well. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu ordered his guards that take this woman to the stoning area and stone her to death, because she's married, she's committed adultery, and as is the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and of the sunnah and the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, such a person, man or woman, should be stoned to death. So this is what Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu ordered. So the guards, they took this woman, and on the way to the stoning area, they met Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and they asked, or Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu asked them that, where are you taking this woman? What has she done? They explained the whole situation. She committed zina, she committed adultery. And they also said to Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu that she is also insane and majnoon. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu then said to the guards that take her back, free her. Don't take her to the stoning area, free her. Now when the guards returned back to Hazrat Umar and they explained the situation, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu said to himself that there must be some reason why Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu turned this woman back. And later on when he met Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he asked Hazrat Ali that why did you turn this woman back? Then Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu replied to Hazrat Umar that, oh Umar, can't you remember the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Rufi al-qalamu an thalath, that the pen has been lifted from three people. There are three people who are not responsible for their actions. And one of them is a majnoon, someone who's insane until he or she regains sanity. They're not responsible for their actions. So when Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, he heard this hadith and he heard these words from Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, he agreed with his decision and he let that woman go free. That's one example. Another example of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's insight into legal rulings and into jurisprudence issues. During Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time, there wasn't a specific limit on how many lashes you should give to someone for drinking or consuming alcohol. Because obviously during the Sahaba's time, there were very, very few cases of someone drinking alcohol. So anybody who was brought to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would give a few lashes, or he would order someone to give a few lashes, and then that person would be free. But during Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu's time, more and more cases came to him where people have been caught, have been convicted of drinking alcohol. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu was asking the Sahabas, he was asking Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu that, look, we need to have a set punishment so that it acts as a deterrent, so that no one, drinks alcohol. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu then said these words. He said that when a person, when he drinks alcohol, he becomes intoxicated. And when a person is intoxicated, he talks nonsense, he talks garbage, he talks rubbish. And when a person talks nonsense, he is more likely to slander or make false accusations, false allegations on a chaste man, on a chaste woman for being unfaithful. And the penalty, as mentioned in Surah Nur, for those who make false allegations is 80 lashes. So therefore Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu then ordered, he then said to Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu that that person who is convicted of drinking alcohol, caught drinking alcohol, he should be lashed 80 times. So these are just two examples of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's insight and wisdom when it came to jurisprudence issues. Now, whenever whoever's talked about Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, Maulana Sahib, Mufti Sahib, I'm not sure who actually touched on this particular topic, but I'm sure he must have in detail touched about Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu's martyrdom, how he became shaheed. But when Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, when he was attacked and he was wounded, he was stabbed, people came to Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu and they asked him that who should be the next Khalifa, who should be the next Imam. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, he said that I'm not going to choose the next Imam or the next Khalifa, but what I'll do is that I'll mention the name of 6 Sahabas upon whom Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was pleased and happy with, the Ashara Mubashara, whom Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was happy and pleased with when he passed away. And then he mentioned the 6 Sahabas, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Uthman, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Talha radiallahu anhu. And he said that from the 6 Sahabas, these 6 Sahabas, one of them should be nominated as the next Amir, as the next Khalifa, and that the 6 will decide who should be the next Amir, who should be the next Khalifa. As I said, Maulana Sahib, Mufti Sahib, whoever touched on this, he must have gone into it, some detail. But basically, at the end, Abdurrahman bin Auf radiallahu anhu, from the chosen committee, he was the responsible person, he was the Dhimmadar. And after consulting the other Sahabas, after consulting the people, they all unanimously, overwhelmingly agreed that the next Khalifa, the next Amir should be Hazrat Uthman bin Affan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And it's mentioned that on the last day of Zulhijjah, 23rd Hijri, after the Fajr prayer, Hazrat Abdurrahman bin Auf radiyallahu anhu did the bay'ah, did the pledge of loyalty, the pledge of allegiance with Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu anhu, and the second person to do the pledge of loyalty and the pledge of allegiance was Hazrat Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And again, some fabrication here that Hazrat Ali wasn't happy with Uthman radiyallahu anhu being chosen as the next Khalifa. Again, total and utter garbage and rubbish. After Hazrat Abdurrahman bin Auf radiyallahu anhu did the pledge of allegiance and loyalty, the next person straight away to agree and do the next pledge of loyalty and allegiance was Hazrat Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Now, during Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu's life, many Sahabas had passed away, and tribalism started, and also those who were against the Sahabas, those who were against the Khilafat system, started conspiring against the Sahabas, started conspiring against the Imam. And again, Maulana Sahib, Mufti Sahib, whoever touched on the topic of Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu anhu, I'm sure must have mentioned in detail how it all happened. But during this time, Hazrat Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, he kept on obeying Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. There's no mention of ever Hazrat Ali radiyallahu anhu disobeying Hazrat Uthman. And the reason why he kept on obeying Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu is because of a hadith which can be found in Sunan al-Bayhaqi. And the hadith goes on to say that, narrated by Hazrat Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that he heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that indeed a time will come when there will be fitna and ikhtilaf. So the Sahabas, the companions, they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Mada ta'muruna, what should we do in that situation? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied by saying that in that situation, in that time, alaykum bil amir wa ashabihi, that you should follow the amir and you should follow his companions and those who are with the amir. And the hadith goes on to say that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said alaykum bil amir wa yushiru ila Uthman aw kama qala alayhi salatu wassalam, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam pointed at Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu anhu, meaning that when this fitna and ikhtilaf comes, the amir would be Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu anhu. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam pointed at him and said that he will be the amir, obey him, listen to him, and that's what you will do during this time of ikhtilaf and fitna. So what we can gather is that first and foremost, the Khilafat of Uthman radiyallahu anhu was something which was the haqq, which was the truth, and that those insurgents who martyred Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, they were on the wrong, and that the Sahabas and those who were supporting and helped Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu anhu, they were on the haqq. So Hazrat Ali radiyallahu anhu, during this time of tribulation and fitna and ikhtilaf, he was helping Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And he would also try his best to come up with a solution to this problem. It wasn't like he just did his bit. No, he actually actively tried his best to come up with a solution to, take the insurgents away, to decrease the fitna and the ikhtilaf. And it's mentioned that what Saaiduna Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu would do is that he would talk about the virtues of Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Like in particular, there is a hadith in Sunan al-Tirmidhi that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that indeed for every prophet, for every nabi, there is a rafiq, there is a close friend in Jannah. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then said, wa rafiqi fil Jannah Uthman, that my close friend in Jannah, in paradise, would be Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So from this we can understand that, look, Hazrat Uthman radiyallahu anhu was on the batil, was on the false. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wouldn't have given glad tidings that he will be my friend, he will be my close companion in Jannah, in paradise. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu was explaining to people about the virtues of Hazrat Uthman, and he also told the people about the severity of shedding a Muslim's blood. As mentioned in the Quran, that those people who intentionally kill a Muslim, then they will be in the fire of hell, and they will remain there. Allah's anger, Allah's la'na and curse would be on that individual. So this is how Saaiduna Ali radiallahu anhu tried to stop the insurgents and the rebels from uprising by telling them that, look, what you're doing against Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu, it's wrong. Look at his virtues, and look, if you were to do anything, look at the guna, look at the sin Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in the Holy Quran. Even in that situation, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu did ask Hazrat Uthman that, if you want, I'll get my men ready and we will take these insurgents and rebels out. But Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu said that, look, I don't want anyone's blood to be shed because of me, because of my account. I don't want anyone to be killed. Now you may be thinking to yourself that, why didn't Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu just give up the khilafat? You know, why didn't he just give it up? Why didn't he just like say, you know what, you take the khilafat, I'll go somewhere else? Now the reason why Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu did not give up the khilafat, again it's mentioned in a hadith, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again this can be found in a hadith of Sunan al-Tirmidhi, he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clothed you a qamis of khilafah. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that some people will try to take these clothes of khilafah away from you. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when people intend to do that, then do not take the clothes of khilafah off. So this, because of this these words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu did not give up the khilafah, and he was martyred, as I said, Maulana Sahib or Mufti Sahib before must have explained in detail before. Now after Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu was martyred, the next, or the only choice, or the only one who was capable of leading the Islamic State, leading the Muslims, leading the Sahabas who were alive at that time, was Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now after Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu was martyred, people came to him and they wanted to do the pledge of allegiance, the pledge of loyalty. But Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu refused. He said that, look, I don't want to be the next Khalifa, I don't want to be the next Imam. Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu just got martyred, I don't want to actually be the next Imam and the next Khalifa. But Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, then seeing the situation of the Islamic State, being in a state of limbo, no Amir, no Imam, and fearing that there could be further reprisals, further uprising, Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, on the insistence of some Sahabas and companions, what happened, he agreed to then become the next Khalifa and the next Imam of the Muslims. And when Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu became the Khalifa, became the Imam, it's mentioned that all the Muhajiroons, all the Ansar, overwhelmingly all the Sahabas who were alive at that time, they did the pledge of allegiance and loyalty to Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Even Hazrat Zubair radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Hazrat Talha radiallahu anhu. The reason I'm mentioning this is because, again, there are certain fabrications around that Hazrat Talha radiallahu anhu did not do the pledge of allegiance and loyalty to Hazrat Ali. Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu did not accept the bay'ah, or some say that they did, but on the condition that Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu will have to bring the killers of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu to justice. There's no mention of that. It's mentioned quite clearly that Hazrat Zubair, Hazrat Talha, straight away they accepted the Khilafah, they accepted the pledge of allegiance and loyalty of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. We'll look at it later that some companions like Hazrat Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Muhammad bin Maslama radiallahu ta'ala anhu did not agree or accept or did not do the bay'ah with Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, but what we can say is that it is their personal ijtihad, it is their personal opinion, and someone having a personal opinion does not go against what the overwhelming or what the majority of the Sahabas and the scholars say. And this is something which is very, very common when we look at many, many issues, many, many legal rulings, where you will find many of the Sahabas agreeing or saying one thing, and there will be one or two Sahabas having their own personal opinion. But having your own personal opinion, as long as you are the ahl and you are worthy or capable of having it, there's nothing wrong with it. And I'll just give you an example regarding the Mi'raj, regarding the night journey to the seven heavens. Now, as you probably know, that the overwhelmingly all the Sahabas, all the companions, the scholars say that Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's Mi'raj to the seven heavens was ruhan wa jisman, i.e. spiritually and also physically as well. Whereas Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha is of the view that no, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's Mi'raj and night journey to the seven heavens was just spiritually and not physically. So you have all the Sahabas more or less on one side saying that it was physically, it was spiritually, whereas Hazrat Aisha anha by herself in one corner saying that no, it was just spiritually. But obviously we follow the Jumhur, we follow what the majority of Sahabas and the scholars have said. So exactly here as well, all the more or less all the Sahabas, all the overwhelming Sahabas who were there, the Tabi'ins who were there, they agreed and accepted the Khilafah of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. One or two Sahabas out of their own ijtihad, out of their own personal, remember they didn't do it because of hatred, naudhu billah. It was their personal ijtihad, it was personal reasoning, their personal ruling. They didn't want to do the bay'ah with Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's khilafat, as we're going to look at later, it spanned for approximately 4 years. And there were two main incidents during Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's khilafat. There was firstly the Jang-e-Jamal, the Battle of Camel, and the second was Jang-e-Siffin, the Battle of Siffin. Now it is the belief and the aqidah of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah that the conflicts which took place, because these two battles, Battle of Camel and Battle of Siffin, they were actually conflicts between the Sahabas. And the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah say that the noble conflicts between the Sahabas and the companions, we should not talk about it, we should not deliberate about it in any detail, in any tafsir. Why? Because there may be a danger that by talking about it or going into too much detail, going into too much of the nitty-gritty, what could happen is unintentionally the speaker or the listener may have some kind of bad feelings against the Sahabas and against the companions. So the scholars, the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah's belief and aqidah is that you should not really talk about these two battles in any detail. And in particular, in such detail where you are disrespecting the greatness and the nobleness of the Sahabas and the companions, ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. And when we look at, say, the sects or cults who have deviated away from the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, many factors or reasons why they've deviated, but if you look at it closely, one of the reasons why they've gone away from the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, or why they've deviated away from them, is because they don't respect the Sahabas. You know, they just treat the Sahabas like normal people. You know, just like treat them as normal people, like same way you and I are ordinary and normal. They treat the Sahabas like that. And that's why when you start having these kind of belief, or if you treat the Sahabas in that particular way, then you're asking for trouble, you're asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to misguide you. And that's what happened to many sects or cults who started, but then they deviated away from the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Why? Because they did not show the love and the muhabba for the Sahabas and for the companions. So to touch on this particular topic in any detail, and in particular in such a way where it may cause offense or disrespect to the Sahabas, then this is something which is wrong. And this, remember something, we need to have the love of the Sahaba. Same way, love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, also the love of the Sahabas and companions in our hearts. And that's why it's mentioned in a hadith of Sunan al-Tirmidhi that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that if you hear anyone talking bad about a Sahabi, talking bad about my companions, then the hadith says la'natullah faqulu la'natullah ala shirarikum, aw kama qala alayhi salatu wasalam, which means that you are able or allowed to curse them. You are able to say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's curse be on your evil and on your shar and what you're doing. So what I'm trying to say is that respecting the Sahabas is paramount. We have to do it. So talking about these topics in any way where the Sahaba is going to be disrespected is wrong and is incorrect. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't talk about it, because if that was the case, then no books would have been written on the Battle of Camel, no articles would have been written on the Battle of Siffin. We can talk about it, but it has to be done carefully, and it has to be done in such a way, keeping the respect and the azmat of the Sahabas in our heart. Now, initially, I didn't want to talk about this particular topic, but then I thought to myself, if you were to do a Google search on Battle of Siffin, Battle of Camel, I'm sure you'll get so many articles on that particular battle. But most of the articles you'll get will be from a Shia orientated sources, which will be totally away from the truth and away from the haqq. So we at least need to know, not in any detail, but at least need to know the crux of the story. Why it happened, how it happened, so that if we ever were to listen to any other talks about the Battle of Camel, Battle of Siffin, or if we were to ever open a book and read about the story, then we'll know that, okay, this is the truth, and this is, question mark, this is a bit dodgy, and so on and so forth. So my intention here is to just mention about the two incidents very briefly, so that we get the crux of the two battles, the Battle of Camel and the Battle of Siffin. And remember this point here, wherever there's a doubt, wherever there is a shak, it's actually the sunnah and the teaching of the sharia that you should take steps to clear that doubt and clear that shak. Whenever you think that people may accuse you of something which is untrue, which is incorrect, you should take steps to actually clear your name. And I'll just narrate a story of Abdullah bin Salam radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that when he converted to Islam, as you know, he was a Jewish rabbi. So when he converted to Islam, he said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that my people, the Banu Qaynuqa, they are a slanderous bunch. And he said that, look, if I was to leave your majlis and gathering now, they find out that I've converted to Islam, they'll make all these allegations that Abdullah bin Salam is like this, is like that. And you and the Sahabas will get this kind of wrong picture of who I truly am. So it's mentioned in the hadith of Imam Bayhaqi's Dalail al-Nubuwah that he then suggested to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that conceal me or hide me in a room and then call my people. And then ask them about me, ask them who I really am. So this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. He hid Abdullah bin Salam radiallahu ta'ala anhu in the chamber. He called his people the Banu Qaynuqa. And he said to them, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to them that, what do you think of Abdullah bin Salam? So his people replied, oh, he's a great scholar, he's one of us, he's a gem, a Jewish rabbi, all the ta'rif, all the praises and so on. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to them that if I was to tell you that Abdullah bin Salam has converted to Islam, would you believe me? So then they replied, no, he'll never ditch us, he'll never go against us, he's one of us and so on, he'll never ever accept your religion. So at that time, Abdullah bin Salam, he then comes out of the room and he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And as soon as they hear those words, they then started slandering Abdullah bin Salam, say, oh, he's like this, he's like that, he's useless, bekarat admi and so on, no good at all. So what I'm trying to say is that Abdullah bin Salam, he knew that they were going to do this. So what he did, he took steps to, take away the allegations people are going to make about him. It's like today we're reading this hadith in Sunan Abu Dawud. The chapter which Imam Abu Dawud rahimullah he bought was Babu Salati al Hasir, praying salah on a rug or on a mat, like a prayer mat. So praying salah over that. And when you look at the commentary of this particular chapter, the reason why Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah, he brought this chapter is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran said, وَجَعَلْنَا جَهَنَّمَ لِلْكَافِرِينَ حَصِيرًا. So because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that those who don't believe in him, in the fire of hell, they will be given a hasir, like a mat, and they will have to stay in that mat, and they will be like burnt and so on. So people may have a doubt that to pray salah on a mat would be impermissible, because Allah has said that the mat, this hasir, will be the abode for the people who don't believe in him. So therefore Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah, he brings a chapter and he brings a hadith of a person from Ansar who invited Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his house, and then that person, or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then prayed salah on a hasir. And from there Imam Abu Dawud rahimahullah, he explains, or he mentions the ruling that no one should get this doubt, and that it is permissible to pray salah over a prayer mat. So what I'm trying to say is that this is when you look in Bukhari in particular, Sahih al-Bukhari, that's how most of the chapters are. Most of the chapters in Sunan al-Tirmidhi exactly the same. The muhaddithin, they bring chapters to get rid of a doubt and a shak. So as I was saying here, that sometimes you need to explain things so that people, don't get the wrong meaning or the wrong interpretation of a particular incident. Now, beginning with the first incident, Jang-e Jamal, the Battle of Camel. Now, Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was in Khilafat for 4 months, and he hadn't taken any retribution or any, he has those who murdered Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he didn't take any revenge or any kind of retributions against them. So it's mentioned that Hazrat Talha radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Zubair, they went to Makkah to speak to Hazrat Aisha anha. And then from Makkah, Hazrat Aisha, Hazrat Zubair, Hazrat Talha, they then went to Basra, which is in Iraq. And their intention to go to Iraq was to speak to the soldiers and tell the soldiers or help the soldiers in finding the killers of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, he heard about Hazrat Talha, Zubair, Hazrat Aisha anha making their way towards Basra, and he thought that this was against his power, because obviously the Khalifa, whoever the Khalifa or the Amir is, they should respect the Amir, they should not do anything against the Amir. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu also went to Basra as well with his people, with his army. And it's mentioned that he then sent one of his guards or one of his people, Qa'qa bin Amr, to Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu, to Hazrat Talha, to Hazrat Aisha anha, telling them to reconcile. Hazrat Aisha anha then brought a messenger or sent a messenger to Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, telling him that, look, we have gathered here not to cause any kind of disunity, but to in fact bring some kind of reconciliation and bring some kind of peace and find the true killers of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now when this message came to Hazrat Ali, he then stood up and he then gave a speech or a talk to his soldiers, to his people. And he explained to them that, look, before Islam, we were living in this life where, there was so much disunity, there was hardly any peace. Thereafter, he reminded the Sahabas that in the very beginning of Islam, there was so much difficulty, but the Muslims, we were together in Makkah, there was that brotherhood there. Then he mentioned about Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's Khilafat, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu's Khilafat, how peaceful it was. So after mentioning that, and he said that his willingness to reconcile and maintain that Islamic brotherhood, there were some insurgents in that particular gathering. And these insurgents were responsible for the death of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So these insurgents, in particular Abdullah bin Sabah, he said that, look, if Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu reconciles with Hazrat Talha or Zubair and Hazrat Aisha, it will be at our expense. Meaning, because we were responsible for the death of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and if he reconciles with them, it means that we will then be captured, we will then be caught, and we will then be brought to justice. So what they then did, these insurgents, is that they then decided amongst themselves that what we will do is we will then attack Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha, Hazrat Zubair, Hazrat Talha, their group in the morning, and we will also attack our group as well. And in the confusion, if they were to ask who started the fight, who's attacking us, we will blame it on the other group. We will say, oh, Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha's army attacked us. And if they were to ask, we will say that, well, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu's army attacked us. So in that particular way, they kind of started a fight. These insurgents, these rebels, they started a fight between the two Muslim parties. And they started obviously fighting with each other, not with the intention of killing the others, but more out of self-defense. And without realizing that actually the fight was initiated by this Abdullah bin Sabah, the person who was responsible for the death of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So this obviously unfortunately happened. And obviously it's mentioned in the books of Sirah, in particular in Ibn Kathir's Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, that when all this happened, Hazrat Talha radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Zubair radiallahu anhu, he didn't want anything to do with this, so he kind of left the battle and so on. And it's mentioned that when the battle did end, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu made sure that Hazrat Aisha anha returned safely back to Medina Munawwar. So there was no kind of in-feeling there. It was just like one of those unfortunate circumstances where, due to some hypocrites, due to some munafiqs, they kind of caused a battle between the two Muslim groups. So that in a nutshell was the Battle of Camel. Thereafter there was the Battle of Siffin, which took place between Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu and Hazrat Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So again, the backdrop to this particular incident was that Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, he invited Hazrat Muawiyah to accept his khilafat, to pledge loyalty and allegiance. Hazrat Muawiyah radiallahu anhu replied back by saying that I'm not going to accept it unless you bring the killers of Hazrat Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu to justice. So this obviously led to some meeting between them. There was this kind of like trying for this truce, for a peace treaty. It didn't work. There was some clashes. Again, they tried for another peace treaty. It didn't work. Then it escalated into a small kind of a battle. But later on, there was a peace treaty. So these are the two incidents in a nutshell. What happened, the Battle of Camel and the Battle of Siffin. And as I mentioned before, that this was what we call the ijtihad of the Sahabas. It was their opinion. They didn't wage war because of Naudzubillah having any kind of hatred against Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. It was based on their ijtihad and based on their reasoning. And I'll just mention a hadith which is narrated by Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, which can be found in Mishkat al-Masabih and also in Razin as well. That once Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, he heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the ikhtilaf and about the differences of opinions of the Sahabas and of the companions. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a wahi to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, explaining that your Sahabas and your companions, they are like stars. And the same way like the stars, each one of them give guidance and so on, or Nur gives guidance. So whichever star you follow, then you will find guidance and hidayah. So exactly here as well, that Naudzubillah, we never ever criticize the Sahabas. We never ever will say a Sahabi or a companion is wrong or incorrect. Naudzubillah, we never ever say that. It was their difference of opinions, but their difference of opinion didn't matter, because as this hadith says, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then says, Ashabi kan nujum fa bi ayyihim iqtadaytum ihtadaytum, which means that my companions, they are like stars, and whichever companion or Sahabi you follow, then inshallah you will find the right path and the right guidance. Now another political issue during Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's life was the uprising of the insurgents, the Khawarij. The word Khawarij is derived from the word Khuruj, taken out from the word Khuruj, which means to leave. And what these people did was that initially they were with Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, but they then went against Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Now, there was a battle known as the Battle of Naharwan. And this battle was between Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu and his soldiers against these Khawarij and against these insurgents and rebels. And in this particular battle, the Muslims, they totally annihilated the Khawarij and the rebels. They were like totally beaten and they were totally annihilated. Thereafter, 3 people who were part of the Khawarij, part of the rebels, who were also part of this particular battle as well, Abdurrahman ibn Maljam, his companion Al-Buruq ibn Abdullah, and Amr ibn Bakr at-Taymi. So Abdurrahman ibn Maljam, Al-Buruq ibn Abdullah, and Amr ibn Bakr at-Taymi. So one day they sat together and they were talking about the Battle of Naharwan, where their loved ones, their fathers, their brothers were killed. And they were talking or criticizing, Nauzubillah, the rulers of that time, i.e. Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, and so on. So they then said to themselves that this is something, a distinct feature of the Khawarij and the rebels, is that what they do is that they sacrifice everything for what they believe in. So they then said to themselves that, look, why don't we do a great deed and a great action? Why don't we kill these leaders? Why don't we, obviously to them it's a great deed and a great action, obviously to us obviously it's like the worst of all deeds. But they were saying to themselves that why don't we do a great deed and a great action? Nauzubillah, get these leaders, get rid of these leaders from this world and from this earth by assassinating them. So it's mentioned that Abdurrahman ibn Maljam, he said that I'll take care of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Buruq bin Abdullah, he said that I'll take care of Hazrat Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. And Amr ibn Abu Bakr at-Taymi said that I'll take care of Amr bin As radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And they made this solemn pledge that either we kill our target or we will get killed in trying to kill our target. So they said that either they die or we get killed in the process, but that's what we're going to do. One or the other, either it's going to be this or it's going to be this, it's going to be that. We're not going to stay alive and so on. So this is what they pledged, and they made the intention that on the 17th of Ramadan, the 40th year of Hijri, they will carry this particular act. Now the story is a very detailed story, but a side story to that, it goes on to say that the day before they planned to do this assassination of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, on the 16th of Ramadan they arrived at Kufa, where Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, the Islamic State, the Islamic capital, was based. And this Ibn Maljam, he met this woman from the tribe called Taymur Rabab, and her name was Qutam bint Ash-Shajna. So this woman called Qutam bint Ash-Shajna, he met this woman, and obviously she was a beautiful woman, and unfortunately what happens with men is that when they see someone beautiful, they fall in love with her. So this is what this man did, was that as soon as he saw this woman Qutam bint Ash-Shajna, she was very pretty, she was very beautiful, he fell in love with her and he proposed to her. He said that, look, I want to marry you. Now Qutam bint Ash-Shajna, she was also from the rebel side, from the insurgent side, and she also lost her father during the Battle of Naharwan. So she said to her Ibn Maljam that, okay, I'll marry you, but my mahar, my dowry is 3,000 dirhams, a servant, so you have to give me a servant, a gulam, you have to give me a slave girl, a bandi, and the fourth thing which you have to do, which is part of my mahar and dowry, is you have to kill Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So even this woman as well, because she was from that side, she wanted obviously Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu killed. So obviously Ibn Maljam then turned around and said, oh well, I've come to Kufa with that particular intention. So then this woman Qutam bint Ash-Shajna said that I'll get a man ready from my side. So she got a man ready in the name of Wardan, and then Ibn Maljam went to speak to one of his companions in the name of Shabib ibn Bajra. Shabib ibn Bajra. So it's mentioned that Ibn Maljam, he went to speak to Shabib ibn Bajra, and he said that, look, do you want to do a good deed or a good action? So Shabib ibn Bajra replied that, what do you mean? What is your deed? What is your action? So Ibn Maljam said that, I intend to kill Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So this person, Shabib ibn Bajra, replied by saying, just hold on there, what are you saying? You want to kill Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu? Don't you know about the state? This person, Shabib ibn Bajra, he was also one of them as well. He was a rebel. But at the same time, he knew about the virtue of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the cousin brother of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the son-in-law of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He still had that azmat and respect for Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu. So he said that you want to kill Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, you want to do something like that. So then Ibn Maljam explained to Shabib ibn Bajra that, look, what Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu did to our forefathers, did to our cousins, did to our brothers, did to our fathers, and so on and so forth. So he managed to convince Shabib ibn Bajra to help him in his sinister plan. So it's mentioned that on the 17th of Ramadan, when Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was making his way for the Fajr prayer, Shabib ibn Bajra, they were hiding, Shabib ibn Bajra, Ibn Maljam, and Wardan, they were hiding, waiting for Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So as soon as he entered the masjid, Shabib ibn Bajra got his sword. He aimed for Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, but he missed it. Then Ibn Maljam got his sword and he hit Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu over his head. Okay, sword over his head. So basically he did a really big wound and a gash in the head of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu collapsed to the floor. Wardan, he didn't actually do anything, but obviously when he saw what has happened and the mess which was there, he quickly ran and he went and hid in his house. Now when he went inside his house, one of the tribe members asked Wardan that, what are you doing here? Why have you got a sword? So Wardan explained to him that, we were planning na'udzubillah to assassinate Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So this person, he got so much into Josh that he then went home, he got his sword, he came back and he killed Wardan then and there. It was that, you do this against the Amir, you do this against Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu. So then and there he just killed him. And then it's mentioned that Shabib ibn Bajra, he managed to escape, but Ibn Maljam, he was caught. And then it's mentioned that afterwards he was brought to Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu asked him that, why did you do this for, and so on and so forth. But afterwards he was killed and he was punished for his actions, Ibn Maljam. But anyway, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu remained alive for another 4 days, and then on the 21st of Ramadan, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu left this mortal world. So as you can see, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu died as a shaheed, died as a martyr. And this was obviously a prophecy which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made during his time, that Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, like Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, like Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu, would die as a shaheed and would die as a martyr. Now when Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu passed away, it's mentioned that his body was washed by his two sons, Hazrat Hassan, Hazrat Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, and also by Abdullah bin Ja'far radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And he was shrouded in 3 pieces, the izar, the qamis and the lifafa. Thereafter his son Hazrat Hassan radiallahu ta'ala anhu read the janazah prayer. Then there are 3 opinions regarding where was Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu buried. Where was he buried? Now some scholars say that he was buried in Kufa. He was buried in Kufa where the incident happened. Some other scholars say that he was buried in a place called Ar-Rabah. And the third opinion goes on to say that he was buried in Medina Munawwara, i.e. his coffin or his body was taken to Medina Munawwara and he was buried there. But one thing we can say for sure and definite is that Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu is not buried in Najaf. Najaf is that place in Iraq where they say the tomb or the shrine of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and you see many Shias go there and worship whatever they do there. So what we can say that Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu is not buried there. Okay, it's just an innovation which was made afterwards. And the scholars actually say that in fact that particular place is where Mughira bin Shu'bah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, another Sahabi, another companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is buried there. But what we can say is that Najaf, the tomb or the shrine of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, this is not where he's buried. There's three opinions where he's buried, we can't say for sure, but these are the three which I have mentioned. And there's also a difference of opinion regarding Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's age when he was killed, when he was martyred. One opinion goes on to say that he was 59 years old. The second opinion goes on to say that he was 65 years old. And the third opinion goes on to say that Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was 63 years old when he was killed and when he was martyred. And this third opinion of 63 years old is the most correct and is the most authentic opinion. Now before we finish, just want to look at more of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's loved ones, his wife, his children, how many wives did he have, and so on and so forth. Now as I mentioned before briefly in last week's lesson, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had 4 daughters. The first one was Hazrat Zainab radiallahu anha. Thereafterwards it was Hazrat Ruqayya radiallahu anha, who was married to Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu. Thereafterwards, after Hazrat Ruqayya radiallahu anha passed away, then Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu then married Kulthum radiallahu ta'ala anha. And his 4th daughter was Hazrat Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, and she was married to Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And it's mentioned regarding their nikah and regarding their marriage that Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu married her in the 2nd year of Hijri, the 2nd year of migration, and that Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha was born when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was 35 years old. Okay, so when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was 35 years old, and if you were to work it out, it would mean that Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha was approximately 17 when she got married to Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And as a mahar and as a dowry, Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu gave Hazrat Fatima a shield which was worth 400 dirhams, and from there you get the masla about Mahr Fatima and so on, which obviously we're not going to go into here, or we're not going to go into any detail here because of the lack of time. It's also mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha what we call in Urdu a jahez, and a jahez is what is like what a father gives to his daughter when she goes to live in the husband's house. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave her like a container, a pillow, and it's also mentioned a garment. And from this we can derive the permissibility of giving a jahez, like when you marry your daughter and then she goes to live with the husband, then to give her something like furnitures, bedroom furnitures and so on. As long as it's not like too expensive or too lavish, something which is reasonable, then we can derive the permissibility from this particular incident. Now the lifestyle of Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha and Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu was, alhamdulillah, very, very simple. Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha's life was very simple. Many, many days would pass when they would have no food at all. And also it's mentioned that Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha would do all the household chores. She would knead the dough, she would make the bread, and any other household chores regarding sweeping the floor and so on, Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha would do that. And it's mentioned in a hadith of Sahih Muslim, but different variations in Sunan Abu Dawud slightly different, Sunan Tirmidhi slightly different, that once Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha, her hands were aching because of kneading the dough all the time. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu suggested to her that why don't you go to your father and ask him for some slave girls, ask him for some bandis who could come and assist us and help us in the household chores. So it's mentioned that Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha went, there were some other people there, she felt ashamed, shy. She came back and she told Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu to go. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu went and said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that can we have a slave girl to help Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha in the household chores. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied by saying that, shall I not tell you something more better than that? And the advice Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave was, glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 10 times, i.e. say subhanallah 10 times, alhamdulillah 10 times, and say Allahu Akbar 10 times after every salah. And then before you go to sleep, tell her to say 33 times subhanallah, 33 times alhamdulillah, and 34 times Allahu Akbar. And all the difficulty she's feeling in kneading the dough and making the bread and so on, inshallah that will go away. And from this hadith we can derive the permissibility of women doing the household chores. You know, many women say, well, we don't have to do the household chores. You know, look at this example of Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam thought that for a woman to do a household chore was zulm, was oppression, then he would have said to Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu that, look, don't tell my daughter to do this, this is zulm what you're doing. But no, Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, instead of giving Hazrat Fatima a slave girl to help her, he said to her that, you do it yourself, and this is the nuskha, this is the wazaif and the adiyah which you pray to take away the difficulty and so on. So what we can also derive from this particular story is that the permissibility of women and wives doing the household chores. Now, as I mentioned before, that there was an incident during Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha and Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu's nikah and marriage, where during the marriage Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu wanted to marry the daughter of Abu Jahl, and Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha was upset, and then she brought the case to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was also a bit displeased as well. So thereafter they got back together, and Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu did not marry any other woman during her time on this earth. Now, Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha passed away approximately 6 months after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's death. And after Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha passed away, then it's mentioned that Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu married other women, which obviously we don't have time to go into any detail, but he married other women, he had many children and so on. And the beautiful thing about it is that the children which Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu had, their names, he had many children, I think approximately 17 sons, 17 or 14 sons. But the names of them was Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar and Hazrat Uthman. So again, if say for example, if Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, as the Shia say, he didn't like Hazrat Abu Bakr, he didn't like Umar, he didn't like Uthman, or like Hazrat Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman, they were his enemies, then would you call your son's name after your enemy? No, you're not going to do that. It's simple. If you don't like someone, you're not going to call your son after the name of your enemy. So what we can see is that Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu did not have any enmity, did not have any hatred against Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Uthman. He loved them to the extent, he respected them to the extent that he named his own children after them. I'll just finish off by mentioning a couple of things regarding Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu's physical characteristics and one or two things about his virtues, and then inshallah we'll wrap the topic up. The best description of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu is given or was given by a Maliki scholar in the name of Ibn Abdul Barr al-Maliki. And he mentioned that Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was of an average height. So he wasn't too tall, he wasn't too short, he was average. He had wide black eyes. He had wide black eyes, and he had a handsome face. And he was also stocky as well. And it's mentioned that his arms were very, very big, and that the bones in his shoulders were like the bones of lion. I mean, like very, very powerful. And it's mentioned that if he was to if he got hold of someone, or someone's hand or someone's body or even around the neck, just like holding him without actually squeezing, just like holding him, that would be enough to just suffocate that person. So that's how big Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu's hand was. Because obviously Hazrat Ali was a warrior, participated in various battles with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahabas. And just one final point to mention, as I said, just one or two virtues about Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. There is a hadith, which very famous hadith, during the battle of Khaybar, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that tomorrow I am going to give the flag to someone, يَفْتَحُ اللَّهُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant victory on his hands. And then the words Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, يُحِبُّ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيُحِبُّهُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. And this person is liked and loved by Allah and His Rasul, and he loves Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So look at this praise, tarif, that he's such a person. Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam loves this person. So the next day, as you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked ways, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, they said, oh, he's got some pain in his eyes. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called him. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam put his blessed saliva in his eyes, and his eyes became better. And then under his leadership, the battle of Khaybar was won. And another hadith, just very quickly, a very famous hadith of Sahih Muslim, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "La yuhibbani illa mu'min, la ilayya alla yuhibbani illa mu'min, wa la yubghidani illa munafiq." Which means that those people who love Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, it's a sign of a true believer. Somebody who loves Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, it means that he's a proper pakka, he's a proper solid believer. And that person who has any kind of enmity, any kind of hatred for Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, it's a sign of his nifaq and hypocrisy. Okay? Remember these talks which you're doing about the Ashra Mubashara, the Sahabas and so on. You know, the main purpose isn't that we just listen to the talks, we take it from one ear, you know, take it out from the other. The whole purpose is that we build the love of the Sahabas and the companions in our hearts. This is something which is lacking. Love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and love for the Sahabas and companions. So these stories here is there to motivate us to follow their ways, to follow their sunnah, to take encouragement from, you know, their sacrifices. You know, look at the Sahabas, look at us, billion years, you know, difference. What they did, you know, we can never ever match. But what we can do is at least try our best to, you know, implement some of their sunnah, some of their practices in our lives. And as I mentioned, the very first hadith of last week's lesson, I'll finish with that. This is like the reminder, is that we as Muslims are not ordered to just to follow the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also follow the ways, the practices, the sayings of the Khulafa Rashideen. And the Khulafa Rashideen are Saaiduna Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and also the practices, the sayings, the, you know, the life of Hazrat Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a tawfiq to act as we said, wa